Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery, and you're watching Tuesday's Tip of the Week number 88. In this week's video, we're going to talk about having a release set up as a training tool or how to adapt your current release to allow you to have a training tool. I'm going to go over the importance of this, what I use it in my repertoire of shooting, and how this is actually helping me become a better archer and have less stress, especially when I have to score an arrow or be in a tournament or some situation with added pressure and stress to it. In our YouTube shorts this week, we're going to talk about hinges again, but this week we're actually going to go through having a hinge set up without a click. Last week we talked about hinges and we kind of centered that around having a click, and a lot of you messaged me and say, hey, I don't use a click, how would that be different? So we are going to go over that today. And then in our members only video this week, I'm going to give you some content talking about what I am doing with my shot currently that allows me to have a lot less stress while I'm actually aiming and shooting, and it's helping me be a better archer. All right guys, let's get right into it. All right, so first off, let's just cover why we would want to have a release for training. And the reason is because as we're shooting whatever release aid you may use, it can be of any style. After we've started shooting that and learning it and getting a lot of reps in with it, our subconscious starts learning the timing and what that shot and that release feels like right before it goes off. And then when that happens, our bodies start essentially bracing for impact for the shot firing, the bow going off, and all of that. And then we get some issues with maybe we stop moving a release, we stop our execution with our expansion or our pull, we get over aiming, we get timid, a lot of bad habits and a lot of bad things start creeping in. Sometimes you get extra jumpy, and then some people, that's when they start developing a punch in their shot. So having a release as a training tool can add some variance into what we're seeing with our releases, but it also just reinforces and refocuses our subconscious and our actual conscious mind as well into creating multiple shot timings and focusing on release execution and focusing on our shot process. So now that we have talked about that and we have an idea why we want to do that, let's go over some different releases really quickly. Let's talk about different processes to use. And then if you don't have multiple releases, I will go over what you can do with that as well. All right, so first and foremost, if you have the ability to have multiple releases, this makes it a lot simpler. You can honestly, I have 3 different releases here, but you could honestly have the exact same model release and set it up differently, and this will work for you pretty much just as well. And a lot of archers, with another thing you can do is get a resistance release. So those are like the one that John Dudley offers, the Silverback. Love that release. It's essentially a Carter Evolution with a little bit of a tweak to it. Either one of those is great. Stan makes one, the Element, that works really well. There's other ones out there on the market too. Having those style of releases makes you focus and force yourself to not only have good form that's repeatable, but it also makes you focus on just having a shot process, working through that shot, creating a focus on executing versus over aiming, and it can help you a ton. Especially if you're the type of archer with your standard, maybe a thumb button or a hinge release that likes to pull through that shot, that resistance release is going to keep you honest when you go back to it. So training with that release, you don't have to do every single practice session with that resistance release, but I would mix it in there and maybe even start a lot of my practice rounds and things out with it, because it'll just start enforcing good habits from the beginning. And then if there's something going on that day, you're getting a little weak in your front shoulder, it's creeping up, something bad's happening with it, you're getting a little weak or hesitant with your pull, it points it out really quickly. But if you don't have a resistance release, that is okay. Because even if you just have a hinge release or multiple hinges or a thumb button and hinges, you can have these all done differently and still work for you just as well. So for instance, my main release that I shoot and bounce around over the years has typically been this 2-finger fulcrum flex from True Ball. And the way that I shoot this release is I have it set up with a click in it. I get to that click at full draw when I anchor and add a little extra pressure in with that middle finger, and then I just work my shot until it breaks. This release is not set up with a ton of travel in it, and it's not set up to where it's really slow. However, it does have enough movement and travel in it to where I don't get timid on the back wall, and I think that's really important to point out on your main release, whatever that is, and however you set it up. We don't want it to be too fast on a hinge setting or too light on a thumb button setting to where you don't feel like you can get on that trigger or into that release and build some pressure into the outer finger beds on a hinge release, or build a little bit of pressure onto our thumb button without it firing. We want to be able to maintain strong back wall tension and good preload into those releases without worrying about it. But if you have a release like I said set up that way, complements to it that you can use is one, a thumb button release, because a lot of people will have a hinge release and a lot of people have a thumb button release. And you can set up this trigger depending on if you want to just pull through your shot. You can set it up to where it's got a little bit more tension and it forces you to pull through, elongate, make the shot timing a little slower, and make you have to work a little harder through it. If you like to manipulate your releases, you can have it set up to where you're doing that and it's a little harder trigger, or a little heavier trigger rather, where you're having to work that trigger a little longer, rotate that release a little more, stuff like that. One thing you can also do is have another hinge release set up without a click. And that's what I'm using this HT Pro here for, is this release is set up without a click and it's set up really slow. So with this one, I can get back to full draw. I can feel really confident in it. I can let it balance out in my fingers, and then I can start working through that shot and allow myself to really just focus on executing until it fires. And for me, that is helping a ton, because it's getting my conscious brain focusing in on execution. So then when I want to score and I go back to, say, this fulcrum flex that doesn't need as much movement, I can get it set up, and then I can still have my body be in tune to work through my shot better, but I don't have to move the release as much. Maybe the shot timing's a little quicker, not extremely, but a little faster, so that I can just have my body fresher and run through shots, maybe score a little better, get a little bit better X count like that. All right, now let's say you don't have multiple releases. That is okay. We can make that work as well. If you're using a release with a click on it, it's a little bit more difficult. And the reason I say that is because typically the hinges that we set up that have a click in them, they're designed for us to get back to full draw at anchor, get ourselves settled in, preload the outside of that release a little bit, and have that be our anchor point and starting position when that click happens. So slowing that release down takes us out of our anchor position a little bit more, takes us out of our normal routine. It can cause some issues. So what I would recommend is doing this with a release with no click in it. So if you have it and your preferred method is a click, great. Flip the moon around or exchange it if you need it to be that way, whatever you need to do. Mark your setting prior to that so you know where it is and you can get it back to that same spot. But then go through, have it no click, and then slow the release down. So typically what I'm doing with this HT here is I take half a turn out of it or a full turn out of it, depending on how hard I want to focus on just executing. So maybe if I'm getting jumpy, or maybe if there's something going on with my shot and I just need to relax, then I'll take maybe a full turn out of this. If I'm just segmenting my normal daily training and what I'm doing, I may take it where it's perfectly going off and then take half a turn out of it. So it's a little slower, forces me to work through it a little bit more, maybe not breaking down, and then I'll shoot a full round that way. So that is one way you can do it with a hinge release. You can vary the speeds, slow them down, and then put them back to where you need them to be for your normal target round. On a thumb button, you're actually going to increase the tension on the trigger a little bit over what you normally would. So all these thumb buttons are different, but when you're doing this, just increase it a little bit more and have it change to have you slow down and have to work harder through that shot. And what that'll do is when you go back to your normal setting, you won't have as much motion, but your body will still be working through it the same way. You're gonna find that your shots fire a lot easier and you're able to actually work the release easier, and it's gonna help you with your scoring. It's gonna help you mentally too, not be so stressed out because you're just used to executing and used to working that release a little bit more. All right, everybody, if you are not a member of this channel and you want that extra content, or you want to be able to have access to me for a free checkup and follow up on your form or your fitment or your shot execution or your tuning or whatever is going on, there is a link down below in the description of this video that'll give you an access to be able to see that members only content. You can see the 2 different packages, the pricing, all that fun stuff. And it's not a lot, but it's enough to help me keep this channel rolling, be able to get some things set up with, you know, other equipment or, you know, better videoing, better whatever to be able to help out with it. Our YouTube shorts this week, we're going to go over using a hinge without a click and what that looks like with your setup. And then on our second video this week, we're going to go over using that hinge without a click for 2 different methods of actually firing it, based on how you may be most comfortable and what you're wanting to do with those releases. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn the bell notifications on. That'll notify you when these videos come out, but also when those YouTube shorts come out as well. Appreciate everybody for watching. I'll see you soon.